one day, without you even knowing it, your life will end. And what legacy will you have left behind, sir? Murderer, serial killer. You ruined the lives of your family, your children, and many people in this courtroom. You've bloodied and stained the medical profession.
That is the only time that I thought I might die.
This is Dr. Stephen Matthews, who is facing multiple sexual assault charges in Denver, Colorado. Dr. Matthews' free time was spent trying to connect with women on the dating app Hinge. Once he has made a connection, he would invite the women to his house and then drug them.
Because I didn't really want to believe what had happened
Between 2019 and 2023, he drugged 11 women and sexually assaulted 8 of them.
I found him in the kitchen with a drink that he had made for me. I didn't want to offend him, so I took the drink. My ability to control my body was quickly disappearing.
I got in the hot tub, and the very last thing I remember is just looking at the water, and then just lights out.
His victims started speaking up on a Facebook group page, and soon Dr. Matthews was arrested. During his trial, the jury agreed with the prosecution.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Stephen Matthews, guilty of assault in the second degree.
However, the real shocker came when Dr. Matthews broke down on hearing the verdict.
Jury verdict, count 5. Sexual assault incapable of appraising nature of conduct. We, the jury, find the defendant, Stephen Matthews, guilty of sexual assault incapable of appraising nature of conduct. Signature by the foreperson. Did the defendant cause submission through substantial impairment? It is yes. Signature by the foreperson.
During the sentencing phase, Dr. Matthews' mom begged the judge to have mercy on her son.
I hope that I will one day be able to hug you and see you on the other side of these walls.
Dr. Matthews, seeing what he was putting his mother through, became emotional. Before he was sentenced, the judge explained the gravity of his crimes.
And in here today, there is a room full of pain. And this is pain that you have caused your victims. So much suffering, none of it deserved.
This is the moment Dr. Matthews learned his sentence.
I will sentence you to 6 years on each count, consecutive to each other and consecutive to all other sentences. The total number of years are 158 years in prison. This matter is concluded. You're remanded.
Dr. Matthews would not be drugging any other woman. However, Dr. Matthews isn't alone in his courtroom actions.
This monster didn't even know us or our son, but had the audacity to end his life.
Cullen is a serial killer who murdered multiple people in Pennsylvania and New Jersey over the span of 16 years. Cullen worked as a nurse in several hospitals and would constantly inject deadly substances into the IV bag or inject patients with an overdose of their medication.
60-year-old Eleanor Stecker, an asthma patient, was recovering and in no pain when Cullen administered a fatal digoxin overdose. College student Michael Strenko, who suffered from an autoimmune disease, was recovering from what his parents called routine surgery to remove his spleen.
Cullen was arrested in 2003, and he confessed to 40 murders, with the police able to confirm 29.
I tried to kill myself throughout my life because I never really liked being who I was, because I didn't think I was worthy of anything.
However, Cullen's co-workers insisted that he had committed up to 100 murders. In court, Cullen readily admitted to his crimes.
Do you wish to plead guilty this morning?
Yes, Your Honor.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes, Your Honor.
However, before he was sentenced, the family members of his victims urged him to look at them as they described him for what he truly was.
One day, without you even knowing it, your life will end. And what legacy will you have left behind, sir? A serial murderer, serial killer. You ruined the lives of your family, your children, and many people in this courtroom. You've bloodied and stained the medical profession. Absolutely abhorrent what you did, sir.
And I still can't really comprehend it. A registered nurse who was supposed to be a caretaker took the life of my brother. for his own personal, selfish, and twisted gain. Charles Cullen, you are a coward. I am very brave for standing here today, but you yet cannot even look me in the eye and face me.
Others recalled how his actions affected them and how he seemed to enjoy their pain.
Charles, why don't you look up at us? I'd like to show you what you did to our children. This is their dad in his coffin. How do you like that?
My heart, it aches for my son. It bleeds for my son.
We vividly remember Charles Cullen walking into the waiting room. He looked us right in the eye and stated how Michael was gravely ill and people don't make it. And my wife told Cullen, "That's enough. You could leave now." We are haunted by the memory of Charles Cullen coming to the waiting room to get our reaction.
Now it's time for the killer nurse to learn his fate.
You are hereby sentenced to New Jersey State Prison to 2 consecutive life sentences, or approximately 127 and a half years of parole ineligibility.
Cullen would be eligible for parole in 2403. Let's compare the jaw-dropping actions of Charles Cullen to the astonishing behavior of Lucy Letby.
Lucy Letby, you murdered 7 babies and attempted to murder 6 others.
A neonatal nurse who was facing charges for multiple counts of murder in England. Between June 2015 and June 2016, Letby murdered 7 babies and injured 8 others. As a nurse working in a unit for newborn infants, Letby often finds ways to poison the infants.
We were shocked, really to the core, to find that a baby had been injected with insulin. It's another layer of surprise, I suppose, as to the depths that Lucy Letby went to.
She would then steal some of the baby items as a sort of trophy and write the initials of the baby on it. Police investigations also revealed that she kept some kind of record of what she did in her diary.
I went down, I was walking down towards the NCU unit, and she was standing next to the cot, and she just looked up, stared at me, walked off. I walked towards the cot, and then I sat down, and then that's when all hell broke loose, and all the buzzers started going off.
Following the investigations, police arrested her.
2 seconds.
Yes?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, not a problem.
I'm just going to put you in the back seat over here.
I'll run round to
Yes.
get the seat.
If you take a seat in there for me, Lucy. I'll move that seat forward a bit.
Yeah, I'm just at knee surgery.
Oh, right, okay.
During her interrogation, she insisted that she was innocent.
They told me that there had been a lot more deaths and that I'd been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them. I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
Although she pleaded not guilty, the evidence and the high rate of infant death when she was called led to her being found guilty. Before she was sentenced, the judge spoke to the child killer directly.
Lucy Letby, you murdered 7 babies and attempted to murder 6 others. In the case of one of them, trying on separate occasions 2 weeks apart to murder her. Over a period of just under 13 months, you killed 7 fragile babies. Some of your victims were only a day or a few days old.
Now, Letby will learn her sentence.
You are now to be sentenced for your crimes. Lucy Letby, on each of the 7 offences of murder and the 7 offences of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life.
Letby will never harm an infant again. However, this wasn't the only time a doctor would appear in court.
In one of the videos, Ortiz can be seen taking IV bags from this warming bin and then replacing them right after. And those bags were then carried into operating rooms, and the patients the IV saline was given to, they suffered cardiac emergencies.
Take, for example, the case of Dr. Rinaldo Rivera Ortiz, an anesthesiologist who is facing multiple charges, including intentional adulteration of a drug in Dallas. According to court documents, Dr. Ortiz was responsible for several emergencies in Baylor, Scott, and White Surgicare. Between May and August 2022, Dr. Ortiz would inject dangerous drugs into IV bags. When other medics administer the IV, patients would get worse rather than better.
The camera captured Reynaldo exiting an operating room and walking toward the IV bag warmer while carrying an IV bag. He placed the bag in the warmer, looked both directions, then walked away quickly.
Caught on camera, secretly filling up large syringes of different types of drugs and putting them in his pocket.
Dr. Ortiz's actions led to the death of Dr. Melanik Kasper, who had used an IV from the hospital to treat herself for dehydration. Doctors started suspecting the IV bags when a teenager's routine operation became worse after an IV was administered to him.
During the trial, we learned Jack Adlerstein almost died from the bags secretly filled with dangerous drugs by Dr. Reynaldo Ortiz.
In the end, Dr. Ortiz was apprehended and sentenced to 190 years in prison. However, Reynaldo Rivera Ortiz isn't alone in his courtroom actions.
If Wetlaufer had not confessed, we would not have known about them, period.
Elizabeth Wetlaufer, a serial killer nurse who's facing multiple murder charges in Canada. Between 2007 and 2016, Wetlaufer murdered 8 senior citizens and injured 6 others. Wetlaufer was a nurse in a care house and would inject senior citizens with lethal doses of insulin. The ones who survived were terribly injured.
That would be tough.
Hey, it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I knew they were going to die.
Yeah.
And it was just an opportunity to give the family a rest.
Yeah.
For years, Wetlaufer confessed her crimes to several people, including an ex and a lawyer. None reported to the police.
That's what I was told to do by the lawyer.
What's that?
Take it to my grave and not tell anybody.
So you confided in a lawyer as well?
A long time ago, yeah.
Eventually, she reported to the right quarters and contacted the police. According to Wetlaufer, she killed the senior citizens because she didn't want them to suffer.
And I didn't really want her to die. I don't know, I was just angry and had this sense inside me that she may be a person that God wanted back with him.
She admitted to struggling with alcohol and drug addiction.
What was your addiction?
Hydrogen rush.
Okay. All right.
Hydrogen rush.
And how much were you using?
I used what I could get a hold of by stealing it from the patient.
Okay.
She claimed to be mentally sick and told officers that she had the voice of God telling her to commit the crimes.
I have caused people's deaths or caused them discomfort through the influence. I believe it was the influence of that voice or whatever it was. It wasn't a voice in my head, it was a voice in here. And when I would do it afterwards, I would hear like a laughter in my chest.
In court, one of her survivors spoke to the judge.
Elizabeth Wetlaufer consumes my life. I don't understand why she was bound, bent, and determined to kill me. Oh, she's in jail, don't worry about it. It's over. It's not over. We as the victims are not weak. We need care. And that doesn't mean we don't matter anymore.
In the end, Wetlaufer was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. Elizabeth Wetlaufer is a prime example of a nurse acting crazy. However, let's not forget the infamous incident involving Redonda Vaught.
Reckless homicide and abuse. That's heavy.
A nurse who was in a Nashville court for criminally negligent homicide. In December 2017, Vaught, a nurse at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center, was instructed to administer Versed, a sedating drug. Instead, she mistakenly administered a fatal dose of vecuronium, a paralyzing drug. Unfortunately, the patient, 75-year-old Charlene Murphy, suffered brain damage and eventually passed.
When you saw the vial and you read what was on the vial, I mean, what goes through your head?
Your heart goes through the floor. You can't even imagine.
Vaught admitted to her error and was fired from the hospital.
Her primary nurse had approached me, showed me the vial of medication, and asked, "Is this what you give her?" And it wasn't until that time that I realized that it was the wrong medication that I had given her.
Months later, she was arrested and charged with criminally negligent homicide, which could see her serve up to 8 years in prison. However, fellow nurses came out in droves to support her.
We went from healthcare heroes to sacrificial lambs.
Almost every nurse has had a medication error of some sort.
A medical error to lead to a criminal charge, and in particular a charge of homicide. That's very, very rare. I can't think of another recent instance where it has occurred.
Despite arguments that Vaught made a mistake, the jury found her guilty.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Redonda Leanne Vaught, guilty.
When given an opportunity to speak, Vaught apologized to the victim's family for her mistake.
I don't know what else to say that is going to make anything any different. Saying I'm sorry doesn't seem like enough, but you deserve to hear that, and you deserve to know that I am very sorry for what happened.
But before she was sentenced, the relatives of the victim spoke to the judge.
No, knowing my mom the way my mom was and stuff, she wouldn't want to see her pull no jail time.
They told the court that their mother would have forgiven Vaught and asked the judge to temper justice with mercy.
We forgive her. My mother-in-law would want her to be forgiven. And jail time is not an option.
I mean, it's sad all the way around for everybody. I mean, not only my family, but hers also.
In the end, the judge chose a much lower sentence.
The court therefore finds that judicial diversion is appropriate and will enter an order today placing the defendant on supervised probation for an effective period of 3 years.
Vaught's probation will end in 2025. While Vaught's case was a mistake, let's not forget the infamous incident involving Dr. McCaffrey.
Watch yourself, Your Honor.
Get out of my courtroom! Get
Pleasure. A pleasure.
He was in Judge Marilyn Million's courtroom for a money dispute. Dr. McCaffrey and his landlord are having issues with the landlord insisting that the doctor is owing him. However, things got heated from the beginning of the proceedings, and the judge appeared to have to put in the last word.
We haven't finished with April, Your Honor.
What else is there to talk about with April?
On a pure business level. And
wait, you're right, we haven't finished with April. In your letter...
Nor have we addressed privity.
Hold on a second, honey. I'm counselor. I am directing these proceedings.
But Dr. McCaffrey wanted to set the record straight.
And I'm Doctor, not Honey.
I'm sorry?
And I'm Dr. McCaffrey and not Honey. Appreciate it.
Judge Million and Dr. McCaffrey went back and forth a few times.
You were Dr. McCaffrey?
I am indeed.
Would you rather I call you counselor, doctor, or anything else?
How about Dr. McCaffrey, Your Honor? It creates a tone of respect.
Where I'm from, you sort of got to earn that.
Guess what? Where I'm from, you're born with it.
Judge Million addresses the landlord, but when she uses a word Dr. McCaffrey doesn't like, he can't keep quiet.
You make this purchase. It's supposed to be a happy day in your life. This is like financial security for you for quite some time. And instead, you gotta jerk around with this for the next year.
Watch yourself, Your Honor.
Judge Million orders him out of her courtroom and implies that the bailiff gets physical with the doctor, which leads to an even more fierce exchange of words.
Get out of my courtroom! Get
out! A pleasure. Thank you.
No, oh no, he's not moving fast enough, Douglas.
If Douglas touches me, you will not be happy, Your Honor.
You know what? If Douglas beats you to a pulp, I'll be delighted. Get out.
In the end, Dr. McCaffrey was taken out of the courtroom. However, when emotions run high in court, the actions of Dr. McCaffrey and Christopher Dunch leave us questioning sanity itself.
I talked to a doctor who said that you were like a serial killer. Do you have a response?
Yes, I'll deal with that in the context of libel later when I've defended myself.
An American neurosurgeon who is facing charges for gross neurosurgical malpractice after maiming 31 patients and causing the death of 2. Between 2011 and 2013, Dr. Dunch injured 33 of his 38 patients who had come to him for spinal operations.
You know, things happen in life, and it makes you kind of emotional when you have your life kind of destroyed by something like this.
Dunch was accused of taking hard drugs before operations, and at least one patient died on his operating table.
There were allegations of drug and alcohol abuse, including a DWI conviction out of Colorado.
Dunch's botched operations were soon discovered. His medical license was revoked, and he was arrested. In court, one of his victims, Mary Efford, told the court how much she had suffered from Dr. Duntsch's cruelty.
I've never had pain like that before. It was just almost, it was a 10 plus.
Other victims also described him.
He's a monster.
Drug addict, a psychopath.
Killer.
A fellow surgeon also testified that Dr. Duntsch's actions weren't just mistakes.
If you asked how egregious it was, I'm not even. It's as egregious as you can imagine. I became concerned whether or not he was a physician and was a surgeon.
Before Dr. Duntsch's sentence, his father told the court how sorry his son was and asked for mercy.
He's been devastated. He has nothing. He's lost everything. He doesn't have his family. He doesn't have his career. He doesn't have his companies. He doesn't have his medical license. And I think what happened is that as things began to fall apart, the only thing he knew was to try harder.
However, the prosecution spoke of Dr. Duntsch's motive and insisted that it would be unfair to grant him mercy.
Because of greed. Because he owed people a lot of money. He wanted to live the high life, and neurosurgeons make the big bucks. Why didn't he stop? Because he has no conscience. They want you to show him mercy, but he showed his patients no mercy.
They maintained that he is not immune to prosecution.
A medical license does not keep you from prosecution if you maim and kill people.
Dr. Duntsch was found guilty and was sentenced to life.
Neurosurgeon will spend the rest of his life behind bars.
Confinement in the Institutional Division of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for life.
He would be eligible for parole in 2045. While some may attribute Dr. Death's actions to mental illness, it pales in comparison to the unfathomable behavior of 48-year-old Amanda Hickey.
We cannot unsee the video of our child and others being abused by someone who is supposed to be protecting them.
Who's facing multiple charges, including cruelty to children. Hickey owns and runs the Little Lovey Daycare located in her home. In February 2021, Hickey called the police and reported that 4-month-old Charlie, one of the children she was looking after, was no longer breathing. When the police arrived, they immediately started CPR on the child, but he was unresponsive.
Yes, clear. Analyzing heart rhythm. Stay clear of patient. Analyzing heart. No shock advised.
All right, let's go.
By the time they reached the hospital, the child was no longer breathing.
Show me how you placed him. Sure. And you do a picture and then show me how you found him.
Ready? Okay.
Police investigations revealed that Hickey had put the child face down on the bed and left him unattended for hours.
The 6-month-old baby was put down for a nap at this house by, looks like, in-home caretakers. Came down to check on the baby right before they called. Found him face down in the bed, not breathing, not conscious, not alert. CPR in progress.
They also discovered that she abused a lot of the children left in her care. She was subsequently arrested.
Can you step out here for just a minute, please? Okay. I want you to turn around and face me, put your hands on your back, okay? You are being placed under arrest.
Okay.
Okay.
During her interrogation, she refused to cooperate with the officers.
That opportunity to decide on whether or not you want to talk to me or not.
I don't know what to do, so I guess we should just move me along. I think I don't know what the right thing to do is, so I don't know what the right thing to do is.
So you don't want to try to talk and get some questions answered?
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to change anything at this point, so.
In court, the first responding officer told the court his experience.
Got there as fast as I could. 2 other officers were already there, and they were already performing CPR. Made entry with another officer, and he went downstairs and, assisted where we could.
But Hickey chalked her behavior down to mental distress.
This is my legacy now. This is all I'll ever be known for. And I understand that that person was broken and not holding it together.
Charlie's parents described their anguish at the death of their son.
The jarring image of Charlie on the hospital operating table while holding his lifeless hand, it still hurts so much. I wish I could erase that day. I wish I had Charlie in my arms.
Other parents also spoke about the cruelty Hickey dished out to their children.
Easy it was for you to yank my daughter by the hair and slam her on her face is not something one does one time.
It is hard to stand up here today and find the words to express the feelings and emotions that we have right now and what we have endured over the last 2.5 years.
Hickey was sentenced to 35 years in prison.
Whether or not this was the first time is not for me to opine on. But what it is the last time. I am going to pronounce a total sentence of 35 years.
She's expected to serve 30 years and 5 years on probation. Just when you thought you'd seen it all, another convict surpasses Hickey's wild courtroom display.
Killing a baby in its mother's womb is the cold-blooded, premeditated murder of a helpless unborn child. The blame for George Tiller's death lies more with the state of Kansas than with me.
Enter Scott Roeder, who's in a Kansas court for murder. In 2009, Roeder followed Dr. Tiller and fatally shot him.
It is no secret that George Tiller killed unborn babies for a living. Abortion was illegal in the state 37 years ago. It was murder then and it is murder now. We do not change reality by changing the law. I did not stop George Tiller to avenge their deaths. I stopped him so he could not kill again.
Roeder was angry that Dr. Tiller performed abortions, and so he shot him at point-blank range after a church service. In court, Roeder did not deny his actions.
That on the morning of May 31st, 2009, you checked out of the motel, you drove over to the Reformation Lutheran Church, you entered the church, and shortly after 10 o'clock, you approached George Tiller and shot him in the head.
Yes.
He told the court why he targeted and shot Dr. Tiller.
Why did you kill him?
The lives of those children were in imminent danger. If someone did not stop George Tiller, he was going to continue as he had done for 36 years prior to that time. If someone did not stop him, they were going to continue to die. The babies were going to continue to die.
Roeder also went into detail about his actions and plans.
What did you do?
I got up at that moment and followed him out and into the foyer area, and I did what I thought was needed to be done to protect the children. I shot him.
After his testimony, his friend Eugene Fry begged the court to have mercy on Roeder, claiming that he wasn't a violent man.
I always found Scott to be polite and courteous to myself and others. Even during heated discussions about the abortion procedure, everyone whom I've talked with about Scott told me that he was never mean-spirited or threatening to them. I have visited with Scott in jail 4 or 5 times and have talked with him on the phone numerous times. From those visits and phone calls, I came to believe that Scott acted on his belief that abortion is murder of a preborn baby. In fact, Scott has stated many times during these talks that he had no other reason to do what he did other than abortion. I would ask that you would consider these facts and impose the lesser sentencing on Scott.
Despite Fry's pleas, the judge gave the recommended sentence.
It will therefore be the order, judgment, and sentence of this court that you be remanded to the custody of the Secretary of Corrections to serve a term of 12 months on each count of aggravated assault.
Roeder was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. While it was clear that Scott Roeder wasn't happy with Dr. Tiller, his actions were similar to the case of Carol Rintala.
Did assault and beat Anna Marie Rintala with the intent to murder her, and by such assault and beating did murder said person.
He was facing charges of murder in Massachusetts. Rintala and her wife, Anna Marie Cochran Rintala, were both paramedics and had a daughter. In March 2010, Anne Marie was found dead at the bottom of the stairs in the couple's home. Her body and the area were all covered in paint.
That expert had testified about paint found on the victim's body in the floor, with the prosecution arguing that it was relevant to the timeline of the homicide.
When Rintala discovered the scene, she called the police, and soon after, investigations began. An autopsy report indicated that Anne Marie had been strangled hours before the supposed fall. Video footage also shows her buying some items that were found on the scene and disposing of other materials. To get more insight into what actually happened, the officers brought Rintala in for questioning.
We were talking. She gave me coffee. She's like, "Can you just go?" the mall or whatever. That's all I can think of, you know. This is nothing like I've ever been trained for. I've never experienced anything like this. Honestly, training, I know now I couldn't work on a loved one.
Rintala acted like she was in grief until the officers brought up her history of abuse and domestic violence against Anna Marie.
All right, so let's back up a bit. You have a history of domestic violence with Anna, right?
We'd argue and it would get physical, absolutely. And I'm no angel, but I can honestly say it was definitely back and she was so bad. I don't trust you. You do things behind my back. I'm like, but it's like, I feel like I've been triggered by talking about our past stuff that we have agreed to, be together, move on, and put our terrible bad past behind us.
Soon enough, her story changed.
What do you think happened? I don't know. I want to say, if I had to guess, I said, she fell down the stairs. It's my guess. She turned on the stupid shoes. We have our shoes all the way down there. She had answers. I wish she did.
Rintala was charged with first-degree murder. In court, the prosecution focused on her history of abuse.
Kara Lee Rintala was charged with assault and battery. She was booked. She was arrested.
However, the defense insisted that there was not enough evidence.
You can't prove the truth of something if it's simply not true. You can pick up these little pieces that Mr. Gagne has made reference to, and you can try to pile them on top of each other to reach the conclusion that you want to draw. But it's a house of cards. A puff of wind blows it all away.
Despite the prosecution's arguments, the jury couldn't agree on a guilty verdict. Rintala's second and third trials also ended in a mistrial. However, in her fourth trial, she was found guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
We, the jury, unanimously find the defendant guilty of voluntary manslaughter.
But before she could be sentenced, their now 16-year-old daughter pleaded for the judge to set her mom free.
I cannot live without my mom, and I need her. Having my mom back home means the world to me, and I am asking you to release my mom right away and let her live with me for good.
In the end, the 13-year case came to an end as Rintala learned her fate.
Give the defendant a sentence of no less than 12, no more than 14 years.
Rintala was sentenced to 12 to 14 years in prison. While some may attribute Kara Rintala's actions to mental illness, could Janine Jones be considered even crazier? Known as the death nurse, Jones was responsible for the death of multiple infants.
She was hopeful that she would find big success in a small town that didn't have its own pediatrician, and she immediately got recommendations, and a few patients were coming in every day.
During the 1970s and 80s, Jones injected lethal amounts of different substances into the kids in her care, killing up to 60 children.
The death rate was higher than it had been in previous months and previous years, and I also noticed that it tended to concentrate more on the 3 to 11 shift, which was the shift that Janine was working.
In 1985, Jones was sentenced to 99 years in prison. She was due for mandatory release in 2018, but the mothers of her victims protested, and she was charged with additional murders.
At that precise moment when the nightmare spiraled, of course you don't know that your child is being murdered by someone who is supposed to be an angel of life, to give life, not take it. And I knew that, something wasn't right. I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that lady murdered my child.
In court, she pled guilty.
The woman once dubbed the Angel of Death finally admitted to murder. Janine Jones pleaded guilty.
Before she could be sentenced, the victim's mothers addressed the death nurse.
So I will leave you with this. I hope for you to live a long and miserable life behind bars. Goodbye.
My baby girl, Rosemary, never had a chance in life to go to school, to get married, and to have my grandbaby.
I often wonder how a person can sleep at night after taking so many helpless babies' lives. You must have a very large black heart.
Jones was sentenced to life imprisonment and will not be eligible for parole until 2037.
I don't think Janine Jones should ever be released from prison. It was very, very obvious and proven that she was the cause of many infants' deaths. I think that she'll repeat again if she gets out and gets a chance.
Janine Jones wasn't the first medic to abuse her powers. There is the case of Harold Shipman.
How many people have been murdered by Dr. Shipman? I don't think that there'll ever be an answer to that question.
An English doctor and serial killer who is facing charges for numerous murders.
If you can stay in the community, receive your treatment in the community, with your family around you, your usual friends, then this all adds to the speed of recovery from the illness.
Over a 30-year period, Shipman murdered around 284 patients. In 1998, Shipman was arrested after police began investigating him. The remains of his past patients were exhumed, and an autopsy was carried out to determine the real cause of death.
Possible for you to, would it be possible for you to sort of come and get something out of your car and then go back in?
I've been advised to stand and let you take a photograph and then go away. And I'm sure you've had enough time to take a decent photograph.
Is it possible for you just to say anything at all?
Back into surgery to do my surgery.
But you have said you have nothing to hide, sir.
The investigation revealed that Shipman, also known as Dr. Death, targeted elderly people, deceiving them to add him to their wills and then giving them a fatal dose of drugs.
Mrs. Grundy's whole £300,000 estate was bequeathed to her doctor, Fred Shipman. 8 days later, Hamiltons received a letter informing them of Mrs. Grundy's death.
In 2000, Shipman was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. But 4 years later, he hanged himself in his cell. He was 58. But Harold Shipman isn't alone in his courtroom actions.
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system works.
Let's not forget the notorious incident involving Larry Nassar, an American osteopathic sports doctor who is facing charges for multiple counts of sexual abuse.
You have to protect your athletes. You have to let them know that we care. You have to not let them know, but let them feel it. Let them understand it. Let them breathe it.
When police questioned him, Nassar insisted he was innocent and instead pointed fingers at the victims.
That's my self-picture, I guess you could say. That. Yes, she was victimized. Yes, I was victimized to myself. If she was feeling violated in any way, shape, and form, there was no communication.
Okay. Following more accusations, police investigated the claims and discovered that Nassar had abused more than 265 young women and girls. He was promptly arrested.
Has there been another complaint? I'm just confused right now.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that we did have another complaint.
Really?
Yeah. Do you ever get aroused during these exams?
I shouldn't be getting an erection during an exam.
Right. Well, this is why I'm talking to you about this, because this young girl and her mother both observed this on more than one occasion during treatment.
In court, one of his victims faced him.
Larry Nassar, I hate you. I, too, was sexually assaulted by Larry Nassar. Multiple times, at multiple appointments. I'm possibly the last child he will ever assault. The word Nassar will permanently be associated with child sexual abuse. Don't get too excited, Larry. You will probably never talk to a woman again, except for one holding a gun, a taser, and a billy club. Thank you.
Her strength encouraged others to speak up.
What kind of a person has the audacity to sexually assault a child in front of their mother?
I will be out in the real world, thriving, empowering, and standing by others, while you rot in a prison cell the rest of your life.
You used my body for 6 years for your own sexual gratification. That is unforgivable.
An emotional Nassar was made to sit and listen as the parents of his victims addressed him.
She took her own life because she couldn't deal with the pain anymore.
You saw.
In a courtroom, we don't use profanity, but if you have some words that you would like to say, I would like to give you the opportunity to say them.
I would ask you to, as part of this sentencing, to grant me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon.
I have
would
a feeling.
Would you do that?
That is not how
Yes
No, sir, I can't.
Would you give me
that.
1 minute?
However, for one parent, words were not enough.
You know that I can't do that. That's not how our legal system works.
Before he was sent away for life, Nassar was given an opportunity to speak.
Your word possible to write and convey. I will carry your words with me for the rest of my days.
Despite his show of remorse, the judge read a letter that contradicted his words.
I was a good doctor because my treatments worked, and those patients that are now speaking out were the same ones that praised and came back over and over. The media convinced them that everything I did was wrong and bad. They feel I broke their trust. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. It is just a complete nightmare. The stories that are being fabricated to sensationalize this.
Finally, the judge ensured Nassar won't hurt another patient.
As much as it was my honor and privilege to hear the sister survivors, it is my honor and privilege to sentence you. Because, sir, you do not deserve to walk outside of a prison ever again. You have done nothing to control those urges. Anywhere you walk, destruction will occur. I find that you don't find that's possible with you. Your decision to assault was precise, calculated, manipulative, devious, despicable. Sir, I'm giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I just signed your death warrant.
Nassar is still serving his sentence in prison.